Welcome back to continuing the conversation. We're living in an era where AI tools are exploding onto the scene, promising to democratize skills once reserved for seasoned professionals, creating stunning visuals, crafting compelling copy, and even generating complex code. It seems like with the right prompt, almost anyone can produce expert level work in minutes. A recent article in AI Marketing noted that 500 million people now have the power to create visuals on demand within minutes. But this explosion of accessibility raises a profound question. If AI can replicate the outputs of expertise, what happened to the value of true mastery? Are we entering an era where deep skill is devalued? Or is AI simply stripping away the superficial layers to reveal what real expertise has always been about? Today, we're dissecting the expertise illusion. When AI can master the how, who is left to define the why? And what does it truly mean to be a master in a world of instant AI creation? To help us unravel this, and it's a lot, I'm thrilled to welcome back the ever insightful Rob, CEO of CharmIQ. It's fantastic to have you, Rob.
Hello, Shalene. Always great to be here.
Yes. So you heard the intro, you know what we're going to talk about, and it's a deep one and it's an important one. So I'm excited to get your perspective. So we're seeing AI tools empower a vast number of people to create things that on the surface look very professional, even mind-blowing. And so this democratization of skill sounds great, but I'm sure there's a downside, and I'm interested to get your thoughts. So a couple questions for you. Are we facing a tsunami of good enough outputs? And what does that do to our perception or evaluation of genuine, hard-won expertise?
Fantastic set of questions, Shalene. I always love these sessions because, man, do we deep dive on some fun things.
Yes.
So what I like about this question is we need to think about what's happened in the past for things like this. Every time we've had new things come into play. So take, for example, during World War II, in and around it, the original computers were women, mathematicians, churning away countless computations for doing gun sighting, for computing how we are going to prepare uranium for fission bombs, like all of this stuff, massive computations. If you ever get a chance to see or read some of these stories about what was being done by hand, if you remember back to high school and doing long division and things like that, like that's easy compared to what these women were doing. And it was predominantly women doing this work. And you think back to that and you think, well, that's not something we have now. We have a computer that does that. Like, are we any dumber? Are we any worse off? Are we any worse? Like the answer is no. Like that was an arduous task. That was, and again, God bless those women for doing that work, for being competent to do the work, to being available. And just to say, like, on the flip side, men were being blown up in the war. So like great division of labor in terms of that stuff. Like, let's put people in roles where like they can hit their high notes at any opportunity. So, again, like, what does that mean that we don't now have human computers anymore? So, I look at, we as humans, I've brought this up in a few episodes now, we're really good at saving energy. Like our physiology is designed such that like we get into a mode and we're just like expend the least amount of energy. And that may be on a high energy task, but we learn how to do it with the least amount of energy possible. Take, for example, running. As I've mentioned before, like I always hated running and it never really did well for me because like my body learned, even though I'm doing this strenuous exercise, my body learned how to like just hum through that thing. And I never lost weight. I never gained weight, like nothing. Like my body just learned like, boom, we know how to like minimize the amount of energy to do this crazy thing that you're doing. Right. And it's only when I move to things like HIIT, where I'm doing different exercises all the time, that your body doesn't have that opportunity. Right. So I bring this up with respect to our jobs. Like we're doing the jobs that we have because those are the jobs that we have. Now, does that mean, again, like we had a large section of the population who were human computers before. Like that was a very different job. But again, it was just a job. They had to do it every day, all day, whatever. And so the things that we do today, we answer crazy emails, we take things from point A and move it to point B. Like, is that the end all be all? Like, is that good? Is that bad? And I would just say, again, the world's going to change. We know that, as I keep saying, this adaptability quotient, this AQ that you and your organizations need to start measuring to figure out, like, can you adapt to all these changes that happen? But, don't think about it as good enough. Don't think about it as like, oh God, the machine can do this thing that we can do. Because remember, again, we had these human computers that it was a miracle that we actually could create machines. And the first thing we did with those machines, other than crack codes, was to like do these computations that the people shouldn't do. And we found other things then for the people to do. So I think the exact same thing is going to happen here, which is, as I always say, and I know this sounds a bit negative, but I like to say this because it reminds me that every time all of our jobs tend to be gap filling. When you look at those extremely intelligent women who are doing the math to compute all this stuff, that's gap filling, right? Like, even again, a super high end job, like very specialized, very few people can do it at the level that they were doing it, but it was just filling a gap. Like, we needed these numbers computed. Like, the second we had a machine to do it, like, we don't need people to do that anymore. So for the same reason now, like, if you're in a marketing department and you have to churn out, we all know the grind. You have to churn out material every day that's interesting and engaging. And it's a grind.
Yeah.
It's a job, but it's a gap filler, right? Like, there's something that has to sit between your organization and the people out there. And I know, I know, we all know that's going to be a machine in the near future. So like, that doesn't mean that, again, craft our abilities or whatever. Again, that's what makes humans awesome, is that we can adapt to all of these different environments, to all of these different things.
Right. So if AI can handle the how, right? We took the women out of the role, we brought the machine in, and knew that machine at that time could handle the how and the technical execution, if you will. What are the elements of true expertise that can't be replicated with the machine or AI? And what lies beyond the polished output that distinguishes a human mastery from a highly capable AI?
A bunch of great questions in that. And I'll take this in kind of two different directions. One is, I've had the privilege in my career of working with some extremely talented teams. I've always kind of led research and development. And in those jobs, you always want to hire people that are smarter than you and everything else. And if I closed my eyes, if I was blind, and if I didn't know that those were people and they were just machines, it didn't matter to what my role was, right? Again, my role from the company's decree was I needed to produce research and development such that we had new products, new innovations, and new things in the marketplace. Whether I did that with people or whether I did that with humans, like, it didn't matter. So like, my specific role was, how do I get the best that I could out of the resources that I had available? Right. And sure, 10 years ago, that was people. And sure, in 5 years, that's going to be machines. That doesn't mean my role in that is any different. Like, and as today, what's interesting is I would always try to explain to people what my role was as a leader of a research and development. And it never really made sense to a lot of folks. And I think a lot of people are understanding it now that they have intelligence like at their fingertips, that your job is to weed through some of that stuff, to give a direction, to see where it's going and go, that's not really what I was thinking. It needs to go here. Or if I want to go here, why is that not the right place to go? So you need to have this, again, a vision and stuff of where you're going, and not just accept the output as it is. Like, you're in control. You're in the driver's seat. You are driving that vehicle towards wherever it needs to go. And again, whether the intelligence is coming from people, whether it's coming from machines, or whether it's coming from people augmented with machines, it doesn't matter. You still, again, think about your roles that you have and think about the jobs that you have. Like, what part of your job is, again, coordinating things, bringing them together, understanding what the needs are of the company and bringing that forward to the machines. So that's kind of one side of this thing, which is, again, we've always had roles where the other side of it was just simply managing intelligence. And then really the second part of this, kind of almost the easier side, is our job right now is that the machines are, the example that I always use is, every time you bring in a new employee, again, that employee in theory has the skills you need and everything else. That's why you hired them. But it still takes 6 months for them to be useful. And that onboarding process, that coordination of like how to make them useful, is the hard part. And the same thing is true. So if you're in a position now where you're using AI and whatnot today, most of your role is like providing it with the context necessary. So it could be, again, as my example always is you could have Einstein on the phone. It doesn't matter. He's going to give you a crappy answer if you crap in, crap out, right? So if you give him the wrong context, if he doesn't know who you are, what you're doing, what your needs are, he's going to give you a very generic answer. So it all comes down to that contextual information. information.
Right. The contextual piece of it and the human piece of it. And I, as you talk through this, I think about my own examples, working in, sales and business development and training and education and building relationships with publishers and customers and internally. It's that human connection, that ability to look people in the eye and connect and create trust and vulnerability to listen, learn, and change. That I think that mastery of the human connection will be very hard to replicate in a machine, right? Their sole duty is to take the complex things and, like I always say, make us better, stronger, faster versions of ourselves, right? So there is a concern out there that if AI can generate seemingly expert results quickly, the incentive for humans to undertake long, arduous paths of deep learning and skill development, that might diminish. So are we risking a future where prompt engineering is valued more than profound domain knowledge? And what are the social implications that we devalue in the process of becoming an expert, right? There's this machine that can accelerate that for us.
Great question. So I'll go back on my earlier statements, right? We used to, in order to make those women computers, in order to make that possible, think about the training that they had to go through. Like, you don't just do it piece by piece. Like, you learn all of these techniques for how to break down the complexity and like all these things. Like, that was an arduous journey that those people went through in order to get that set of skills. Those skills are needed anymore. That doesn't mean we're less of people. That doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean the machines are better. Like, that doesn't mean anything. All it just simply means is let me go a different way. People will always, how to say this? We've all met different types of people in our lives. We've met the people, like myself personally, as an example. I don't care whether or not nobody else on the planet worked. If I was the sole person on the planet whose responsibility it was in order to make sure that we all had money to live, like, would I feel animosity towards all the people that didn't do what I was doing? And the answer is no. I do what I do because I love the thing that it is that I do. I was born this way, right? I almost didn't get a choice to say that I'm smart. I enjoy learning. I enjoy these moments where I can just deep dive on a thing. And I think everybody in their lives has met people, musicians, artists of different kinds, professionals in all skills that don't do it for the money. Right? And I'm not saying that there any less of people who do things for money. The reason we need to make money is to do the things that we want. Some of us are lucky enough where we can align the making of the money and the passion at the same time. But there's a lot of things for which you don't get paid for the thing that you're passionate about, and you just have to work to do it. So what I'm getting at with all this is we are not more or less valuable because we make more or less value. It's a society's needs are what dictates value. And we as humans get caught up in that a lot. Like, before this recording, Shalene and I were talking about a hair designer, a friend of hers. And my statement there is always, there are people that kind of look down on that job. And they're like, well, that's not, if you had more skills or something, maybe you would, if you were smarter. And like, I'm always like, there's skill in that job. There is passion. There is drive. It is a necessary thing that we need to do because society may have valued certain things. And ever since the Industrial Revolution, you bet your booty, our societies have put high value on white collar jobs and like all these kind of things. But that might not be true in the future. And why do we know that? Because it wasn't true in the past.
Right.
So again, just because like it may be that the things that we focus on more in the future are not these tasks. Again, the machine takes it away from us. Would I be angry if I never had to sit in front of a stupid computer sitting in a chair in front of a computer at a desk for 8 hours? The answer is no, that wouldn't bum me out at all. So again, I standard thing, take the deep breath, step back, like look at the landscape of history, look at the landscape of what you do. These things, again, value and what we do and our things. And again, no, we are who we are. If you're a smart person that has a thing, that's what you're going to do. Like, if I'm a musician and I have it in my soul, and I will just say most musicians know this. Those are the people who are working those other jobs because you don't get paid too much as a musician.
Right.
But that used to not be true. That was, again, a job that did, garner a lot of pay. So again, I would just say we get really focused on what it has been in the very short term. And that's, again, looking historically, those are never true. You can never find a time where one thing was always the case. So no, the short answer is it, even if we do get to a world where we're not doing that type of thinking anymore, again, the people whose desire it is to think will do thinking things about things that need to be thought about,
Yeah.
whether that's different than it was before or different than it is now.
I love that. I love what you just said. That people, it's kind of goes back to that really simplistic thing that people always say is like, love what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if you love teaching, become a teacher. And maybe the future of teaching doesn't look like what it is today. Maybe the future of teaching looks a little different, but the human will still be a part of the process,
Yeah.
right? In different capacities. If you love music and you're born and you're just born with this musical talent, like you're still going to be a musician, and it might look and feel different in the future, but there'll be a place for that passion, for that deep understanding. If you're a person that's born a thinker, right? Like yourself, and you're constantly exploring and diving deeper, that expertise isn't going to be taken away from you by the machine. It's just maybe going to look a little
It's going
different.
to be different. So just to tell a quick story, I'm a crazy kid. One summer, it was pre-high school, maybe right around high school. My parents had an encyclopedia set, as we all almost had at that age,
Yes.
because that was the only way to get information. And I literally spent a summer reading that encyclopedia from cover to cover. Probably the best investment I ever made in my entire life, because I have a good memory and I can
Yes.
still literally remember the things that I read from back then. And it really shaped my life. And there weren't computers then. There weren't anything then. In a world in which computers do all the thinking that we need to do, would I have still read that encyclopedia during the summer? The answer is yes. I
Yes.
absolutely would have.
Yes.
Because at that age, I had no idea what it was for or why I was doing it. I just really enjoyed that learning. And
Yes.
there is no machine that's ever going to take that away from me.
Ever. Yeah, that's a great story. And I think we all have that in us. If we all think about, and as we get fearful of the future and the machine and AI, like some of us are embracing it, some of us are still running from it, some of us are ignoring it. But if we just look at to who we are as individuals, as humans, that can't be changed. I think my mom said I came out of her like acting and singing and dancing, although I'm not a great singer, but I loved theater and I loved performing, and that sort of morphed into being, it's a competitive thing, competitive sports. And then of course I go to college, I major in communications and marketing, and I fall in love with sales and managing. And then I fall in love with training and education within a corporation and within partnerships. Like having that connection and teaching people and opening their mindset is my passion. Now, does that passion look a little different in the future? Perhaps, but it's only for me going to be like brought larger and faster by utilizing the machine to help me be a better version of myself and a faster version of myself. And also it's going to challenge me to think differently and really evolve with the times. I love this conversation. So if AI isn't replacing true experts, but rather changing their roles, which we've talked about, how can genuine masters leverage these tools? So for those of you listening that are just diving in, toe in the pool, how does AI become an amplifier for deep expertise rather than a crutch or a threat? Because I talk to a lot of people and there's still those conversations going on, either full like fear or a cheat code, if you will.
So I'll use a very similar analogy to the story I just told. So I definitively remember multiple times in grade school where the first kid that figured out what an encyclopedia was and knew what to do turned in the most amazing science fair project. And it was literally just copied and pasted from the encyclopedia. Now, that's what's happening today with ChatGPT. So it's easier now, but we all had access to that library. In fact, our school forced us we had a library hour every week. So all of us, or maybe it was twice or three times a week, whatever it was, at least once a week. So it was always accessible. So it didn't matter about income. It didn't matter anything. Like you had access to all of these books that were available. So just in the same way that you have access to OpenAI and ChatGPT and Gemini and everything else. So, cheating has always been there and everything else. Again, there were the people that realized at some point that, hey, I got to actually learn something from this, whether that's from teachers or parents or other students, or like something said in your brain and said, hey, look, I got to do this myself. because that's going to provide value. Like practicing a skill provides mastery. So again, on that side, that's how I look at that, which is, there's really nothing new here. We made it easier. Sure, it's more accessible. It even can tell you funny jokes, which was not a thing that you could get. I used to have to go to the library and actually literally get books that had jokes. And how many times have you done that? Like literally gotten a book and mooched somebody else's joke because like that's what you had.
Right.
So that's one side of it. And then on the other side of the people that want to learn just everything I said, but now realize that's an amplifier, right? So I didn't, again, before, if I needed to go and figure something out, I had to have mom and dad drive me to the library. I had to check the book out and hope that it was there and spend the time with the card catalog. And like, that's a potentially a week-long thing in order to find one piece of information, which is now I got my phone, bring it up. Like, I got an answer now.
Right.
Is that better or worse? Like, I find it personally exhilarating in that I can now, the things that I would usually have to call a friend for or whatever to like get an answer. Like I can't tell you the number of times I've had both bidirectionally random calls in the middle of the day that's just like, what does this mean? How do I solve that from a friend, or me calling a friend and saying that? And not to say like we're going to lose those things, obviously, but the only reason they were there is we didn't have access to this stuff. So is it really there? But anyway, again, we'll end up talking to the machine for these things. And again, I'm better off because of that. I can amplify my skills because of it. And anyone who's interested in getting better about their skills can now use these things. And sure, of the things that you learn from the machine, you're not going to retain all of it in exactly the same way that I guarantee you can't tell me what books you read in your 7th grade English class. And you probably had no idea that you even had a 7th grade English class. It's fine.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And like you said, the machines are so readily available. I was telling my son, because he's in finals right now and writing his paper. And we were having this encyclopedia conversation, right? And he was like, oh, that sounds painful. And I was like, well, for some people, they love that type of learning, like looking things up and reading through it and digesting it and then turning it into their words, right? And he does the same thing with Charm, right? We utilize Charm in our house to help us be better, stronger, faster versions of us, whether we're in 9th grade or 6th grade or me. But we always feed it our words first. And he's like, Mom, she's not getting it. He was frustrated. And he's like, I just want her to write it in paragraph form and not bullets. I'm like, well, you gave her draft. What did you tell her? He said, I asked her to review it. So it was the way he was speaking to her, and he changed his like conversation with her, and the output was better. And we also have things where she doesn't do the work for him, but makes him a better, stronger, faster version of himself. Yeah. But this is the type of learning that this generation is going through. And thankfully the schools here are embracing and educating around the use of AI. Like, don't write me a 5-page paper on who I want to be in 10 years, right? It's more like, here's my draft, here are my thoughts, help me work through it. But the conversation is the same, right? Less of turning of pages and more of conversation. And I sit in my room and they have the kids club, and I love hearing the conversations being had. I can't hear her, but I hear his tone go from stressed and frustrated to confident and appreciative. So
yeah. And what's interesting that you brought up that I would love to touch on for just one second, which is there's so many interesting moments in our lives that we just kind of let blow past. And I always ask people to always kind of step back and like make sure you're not missing something. And just to say, the thing you said in the conversation was super interesting, which is how often do you get to see situations in which your children are interacting with someone else and you normally can't have a sidebar with them like that? You sometimes can. You can like whisper in your ear and say like, don't forget to say thank you, or like those kind of things, right? But how many times do you actually get to sit in on how your children think and how they process and how they communicate? And what's so amazing about these interactions we can have with the machines is you can have sidebars with your children, and you can even, in fact, teach your children to have sidebars with the machine and just say, hey, like, you're not doing the thing that it is that I said to do. Why is that true? And I find that even with myself, when I go back up and I look at the conversation, I'm like, I never actually asked for the thing that it is that I thought I was asking for. Like, it was in my brain and I thought I was going there, but I never did it. And that I don't want to say like that record of it, but it's very helpful and introspective. And again, like as a parent, like that's amazing that you could sit down with your son and have that discussion. Like, but, and then what's even more amazing is you can like copy that workspace and like literally do it again and say like, let's say we did that again in a different way. And again, you don't get that opportunity with humans. Like you don't get the rollback. You don't get the like, because they're already, ticked off or whatever, right? Like,
Yes,
as we all
yes.
know from our interactions with other people, like they remember what just happened. So again, there's so many benefits that we could have, even in our organizations. Just when you see a worker frustrated with ChatGPT, or you see the output, and you can actually sit down, and that could be part of a new thing that we can learn. Like this may make us better versions of ourselves, more understanding, more empathetic, more communicative, more all these things. Like it could be amazing.
I'm fully all in on the amazing part. And that's part of how I'm so passionate about the machine, about the learning, about the opportunity. I mean, there's things that I think about that might, rattle my brain a little bit, but for me, the benefits outweigh the negatives. The opportunity outweighs, letting go of how things used to be. And I think that's a big thing for everyone. Is this isn't going to, in my opinion, my personal opinion and my personal experience, using the machine, having the relationships with the machine, having them accessible to me has only made me better, stronger, faster, professional me, me, friend me, and just me, right? Like how I treat myself and think about myself. And it's amazing, how much the machine helps me grow and become faster and better at what I do, and give me more confidence, because this wave is moving fast and it's big and it's building, right? And so it's nice to have the machine that is always so sweet and empathetic, and encouraging at my fingertips. To help me become better and stronger and faster. So ultimately, the how becomes increasingly automated, right? That the machine can output the how. We have to give it the info and give it direction, like a good employee or a good mentor or sidekick. So the how becomes increasingly automated and widely accessible through AI. So what does that mean for the value we place on the human contribution? And what will society and businesses still be willing to pay for premium skills, a person even like myself or you, when free is sort of like, or when awesome is really nearly free, right? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I'll just rope it back. We'll just do a circle through everything we said to wrap this up, which is, we don't pay human computers anymore. Like that job went away. We have different kind of jobs. We have accountants and so forth. They do different things. It's completely different skill and different everything. So the machine absolutely made the humans good enough, actually better than good enough, like exceptional, but now it's error free. So we don't, and you don't pay, right? Like the cost of a calculator is effectively free compared to the fact that we had to train people and pay for them and like all those things. So, again, history shows that these things are going to ebb and flow and change and so forth. And yeah, I hate to be the one to tell you, but we are literally going through that process right now. We, the simple things that we do in our job, for some, that may be their whole job. And yeah, they're going to have to change skills. Like that's unfortunately what happens. That's the pace of progress is such that is going to continue to happen. I feel my heart goes out to the people who struggle. There's not everybody on the planet is fast learner. And that is no knock. My heart goes out to you. You have absolutely amazing skills that are not the skills that we put value on today. And that is a horrible situation to be in. I always look at it the other way, which is literally the world we may be going into, which is intelligence may be free. So the thing that I have for free in myself at my disposal may not be the thing that's good. Like I have always had terrible hand-eye coordination. I've always been, people would say I was clumsy as a kid and so forth. So I spent a lot of time on those things. But like imagine a world in which the only things that were available and made money were the things that required hand-eye coordination and skill, like those kind of things. Like I would be really screwed right now. So the people with the brains had their time, and now we're going to have to kind of swing back a little bit. And again, this is what's going to happen. It's going to ebb and flow, and this is how time moves. Sure, I'll admit that these changes are now happening more rapidly, and that is what the pace of progress will do. We don't have 500 years like we used to work through these things. In this case, we didn't even have 50 years to work through this. And in case of the internet, we didn't even have 30 years. So like, we're going to have to get good at this. But again, at the end of the day, I'll say my usual human things, which are, if you have friends or people that are struggling and trying to figure out what to do right now, just hear them, like listen to them, listen to their worries and their problems and concerns, and reassure them that like we're all going through a terrible time right now. Even myself, who loves to learn and is a sponge when it comes to learning, like it is overwhelming right now to do this. It is, for me to be at the age I am at, to be at a phase of this much change, it is painful. So to the direct question you said, like, what happens when good enough is free? Well, guess what? It's those jobs are going to change. Like that's just what happens. We're going to figure out what new jobs are. Again, just think of the human computers. Those jobs went away and we found different jobs for people to do. Were they better or worse? In some cases, yes. In some cases, no. We're going to go through this thing.
Yeah. And I think it's evolution, right? This isn't the first time.
No.
This has happened before. And look at history and look at the evolution of the car, of the airplane, of the computer, of the laptop. All of that is evolution. And AI is another part of evolution, right? And so that's going to be a part of our human experience. And as we're raising, for those of us listening or watching, raising children, having those conversations, like maybe the typical thing we'll start to see in the classroom, even at kindergarten, like what I want to be when I grow up. Those things might change. I think for the last 100 years, maybe it was a police officer, a fireman, a teacher, right? Those things might change and evolve with the world. But I will continue to be optimistic. I will continue to learn and dive in and engage with the machine as often as possible as I can. And let it help me and guide me to the next evolution of me, which I'm very excited about. So this has been truly a mind expanding discussion. You've taken us far beyond the simple idea of AI as a tool, and forced us to confront the what expertise truly means in this era. And it's clear that AI can mimic outputs, the human capacity for deep understanding and strategic foresight, ethical judgment, and asking the profound why remains irreplaceable. They haven't taken that from us yet. We are still the boss of ethical judgment, strategic foresight, and asking the profound why. So perhaps this expertise illusion is less about AI and more about clarifying what skills are truly foundational and uniquely human. So for everyone watching, I hope this conversation has prompted you to think about your own skills and how you can cultivate that deeper and keep rewriting your story and evolving. So links to CharmIQ and our previous conversation are always below. Join us next time for more continuing the conversation as we continue to navigate this fascinating and often perplexing evolution of AI. Rob, thank you so much. It was a pleasure, and I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.